It's live.
Good evening or good morning or good afternoon or whatever time you're listening or watching this podcast. We are happy to have you here with us on the Cowbell Kingdom podcast, episode 200 and whatever number it is. And the glasses and the hat are back. I was wondering how long it would take, and we might need an extra dose of the silliness today, Leo, because it has been quite the day for us here in Kings Media Land. Matt George from Sports 1140 KHTK, Leo Biez, one of the main men here at Cowbell Kingdom, and we're here to talk plenty of things involving the Sacramento Kings. And guess what, guys? Unfortunately, it's going to be focused heavily on stuff that has nothing to do with the game of basketball or what's taking place on the court. But as is the status quo with this team, every single year there is some kind of story or some kind of event that takes place that changes it from a focus heavy on the game of basketball itself to drama off the court or trade rumors or what have you. And yet again, we do have some of that stuff to talk about. And if those of you aren't up to speed with what's going on currently with the Matt Barnes and DeMarcus Cousins situation at the New York City nightclub, I encourage you to check it out, look up all the reports online, and see the video that TMZ released, and you can formulate your own opinion on what happened and what goes on. Leo and I will try and stay as down the middle as possible as we talk about it, and we'll reset it and really set the scene for those who are a little confused here in just a second. But before we do that, I want to introduce my partner, Leo. How you been, buddy?
Disappointed. Losses and drama make a very unhappy Leo.
And a very unhappy city of Sacramento, it would seem. Gosh, where do you begin? It would have been hard enough just to do a podcast based off of how the Kings have been playing as of late, have shown bright spots in many of their recent road games. And then I've also shown patches of what in the world are you doing? I thought we were past this. Why is this still happening? Unfortunately, this is the team we cover. This is the team we work for. This is the team we know and love. And this is the culture that just has not seemed to change for the Sacramento Kings. And we're just talking specifically on the court. But the off-the-court stuff continues to just rear its other ugly head, Leo. And I guess we can't really beat around the bush more than we already have. We talked about it didn't talk about it for all of, 1 minute and 30 seconds. But now we really have to dive in. So I should let everybody know I am the producer, one of the producers of the board op for the morning show at Sports 1140 KHTK with Carmichael Dave, Katie Christensen, and Nate Goodyear, The Drive. We're on from 6 to 9 a.m. every single morning for those who listen to this podcast and follow Cowbell Kingdom that also follow the show. Thank you so much for your support. For those who don't, give us a check out if you're ever up that early in the morning, just taking your drive to work or what have you. But we're just about to go on air, right? And you can see me and all my Raiders get up right now. It was a huge Sunday for the Oakland Raiders. It was a great football weekend. And so we're all ready to go and get this Raiders heavy show set up and a very positive football related show. And then, yes, of course, we're going to touch on the Knicks and Kings game, which was a disappointing loss for the Sacramento Kings, even though DeMarcus Cousins had another major night in the stat column. Our intro music hits. We're getting ready to start. My phone goes off, and what do I see? Matt Barnes wanted for questioning for allegedly choking a woman in a New York City nightclub. And my first reaction is, well, crap, there goes the show. Because when this stuff breaks on Sacramento radio, when it's covered by TMZ and covered by Bleacher Report, and then the main post is out of New York and the New York Times, the city of Sacramento really only has outlets like KHTK and then later outlets like the SacB and Cowbell Kingdom and other websites like that to follow this stuff because it's on the other side of the country. So naturally that story hits and we learn more and more about it about half an hour into the show after we break the news initially. The video comes out, which you can go to TMZ, just look it up. Just Google Matt Barnes and DeMarcus Cousins right now, and I'm sure that video will come up almost right away of everything going on outside of the nightclub. And in that video, you see a very hyped and very adrenaline-pumped DeMarcus Cousins after what we assume to be the altercation in the nightclub, to where Cousins it's clearly him, and the way you can tell that it's clearly him is not just his DeMarcus Cousins smile that we all know and love, but also the the Band-Aid above one of his eyes where he had that laceration. I think it was the Boston game. Matt Barnes is also clearly seen in the video for a very split second. He's not doing much talking, but the video features DeMarcus Cousins saying a number of things, including "I hit the blank out of that blank," including "I threw a haymaker." Also features him shaking his hand and rubbing his knuckles as you would do after you punch somebody. I've never punched somebody. I have punched things, so I know it hurts, but I can only assume that it would hurt just as much. So that video comes out. Again, go take a look at it. Maybe not right now, but mute us for a second if you want to, if you really have to see it right now, or look at it after the podcast. But just a nightmare situation, Leo, and we'll continue to share this story as we go along. But before I go on for too long, just your initial thoughts on the entire situation as a whole. And remember, Leo and I are approaching this situation directly down the middle, as is our duty as media and as commentators, to look at this. And we both understand, more than anything, innocent until proven guilty. There have been no charges. There have been no accusations that have resulted in any kind of arrest or anything involving both Cousins and Barnes. So things are still very much up in the air. But they're looking more and more likely that something took place, and unfortunately, these two guys were involved.
Yeah, I literally had to drink a smoothie, a pina colada smoothie. Yeah, Yoplait, just to relax for this show, because it's really upsetting, though, Matt. In all seriousness, but again, proven innocent until guilty. We don't know all the facts yet. And until we do know all the facts, then I can really, or we can really assess the entire situation. But as a whole, pretty much a similar reaction to when I saw the reports coming out of Bleacher Report. Well, it was really TMZ. Bleacher Report just aggregates the news. And when I saw that alert, I was like, okay, here we go again. And that was after the Kings PR people were like, Matt Barnes has been great, and blah, blah, blah. And they were raving about him. And then first, the Matt Barnes and DeMarcus Cousins Hennessy debacle, really. To me, it's unacceptable. Like, they are adults. They can do whatever they want. But please don't publicize it to the entire world that you are drinking Hennessy inside the Kings locker room. It's not a good look, man. And then last night they go out and they go to the club. I'm not judging, but Matt Barnes is 36 years old or 37.
And if I can interject really quick, the same club that outside Thabo Sefolosha got into his scrap with the cops and ended up getting shot.
Yeah,
same club.
What are you doing, Matt? You're supposed to be the example, the leader, and because we know DeMarcus is not a leader. He is the best player on this team, no question about it. But in my opinion, and from what I've seen on the court and other stuff, to me, he's not the leader of the team. He is the best player of the team, and to me, Matt Barnes is a leader. And for your leader to be out and regardless of what happened, he put himself in that situation by being there. And it's unfortunate, but it is what it is. And now the Kings and Matt and then the TMZ video of DeMarcus allegedly saying the things that he said, you guys can be the judge of that, and go ahead and go watch that. And it's not a good look, Matt, and it's really unfortunate.
You mentioned something about them being adults, and you're absolutely right. There's no hiding the fact that the life of a basketball player or any superstar athlete or any athlete in general is a lot different. I should say professional athlete is a lot different from that of yours and mine. After a game in New York, their job is essentially done for that night. And when they spend so little time in New York or in certain areas, they typically want to go out and spend a night on the town, which is understandable. A lot of players do it. The difference is a lot of them are able to stay out of the news in a bad way. Those with reputations like Matt Barnes are going to be more susceptible to clashes, to these kind of incidents, to people maybe trying to mess with them a little bit more. And to continue with what the story was and what was going on, Matt Barnes later said, and he told, or his attorney told I can't remember who they told, but they released just the statement that they said that Matt Barnes' side of the story was he was just walking in the club going to his VIP booth, and he quote unquote butt bumped, which I don't know necessarily what that means. It could be butt to butt contact, that could be other different kind of contact. Either way, Barnes insisted it was accidental. He butt bumped a woman, to which she did not take too kindly to it. She turned around and allegedly slapped him in the face very, very hard. And then Barnes was then confronted by the woman's posse or party or group, which were the men getting involved, approached him and seemed violent. Whether or not any kind of drugs or alcohol were involved is unknown at this time, but they approached him and got rather violent with him, at point Barnes, in self-defense, got violent back. And then with Barnes getting involved, DeMarcus then got involved, and you can hear multiple times in the TMZ video, DeMarcus talking about how someone had put Matt Barnes in a headlock, and that's when DeMarcus threw the haymaker, threw his punches to help Matt out. So whether or not that side of the story is true, I'm sure there are bits and pieces, if not the entire thing, that are true. Unfortunately, with Matt Barnes' reputation, you have a knack or an initial reaction to, and again, innocent until proven guilty, but your initial reaction, and most people's initial reaction is, where there's smoke, there's fire. And it's not surprising that something like this would happen to Matt just based off of his history. It's extremely unfortunate. And whether or not he's in the right or he's in the wrong here, depending upon what the result is, we'll just have to wait and see. But ultimately, Leo, these are situations where with someone the age of Matt in his upper 30s, and then DeMarcus Cousins being a late 20s adult now as well, you have to recognize that you can't put yourself in these kind of situations. Yes, it's natural to want to go out and have a good time. I get that. But just to put yourself in these kind of situations and just to not walk away or to react as you did, you have the most to lose out of everybody because of how much you are in the public spotlight, how much money you have, how much weight you carry as a professional athlete. There's just so much to lose for these guys. And unfortunately, whether the situation benefited them or not, or gave them the opportunity to get out or not, they have to be smarter than that. And they weren't.
Yeah, and Matt Barnes later came out and said, "There's always two sides to a story. The side of the media consistently tries to paint of me and what actually happened. Don't believe everything you read." Well, Mr. Matt Barnes, first of all, the only side that is public right now is true. There was an altercation. Your attorney came out and said that you defended yourself. So I don't see what the media is misconstruing here. Like, the media is these videos. This is all on video, Matt. So I don't get what he's trying to say. Where the media consistently tries to paint me. Did he not go to his own house to allegedly whoop Derek Fisher's ass? Like, isn't that what he said? And isn't he the guy that said that violence is not the answer, but sometimes it is? He is on record for doing these things, Matt. He is on record for saying really bad words to James Harden's mom at a basketball game. He's on record for doing all these things. We knew that coming into the season, that he carries all this baggage, but then he childlessly says that the media is trying to portray him for something that he's not. He is who he is.
And that is very much who Matt Barnes is. He's a no-nonsense guy. He does not back down from anyone, and in a lot of ways that's admirable. In a lot of ways that was
full of drama.
One of the major reasons why the Sacramento Kings wanted someone like Barnes is because he is an example of toughness, and his effort on the court is to most of the time be admired and appreciated. But this is the side of Matt Barnes that you were afraid of rearing its ugly head, and unfortunately it has. And unfortunately, your superstar DeMarcus Cousins was along for the ride. Now, depending upon how much blame is to throw out there and what really happened, ultimately DeMarcus Cousins is not the number one guilty party or the number one person responsible here. The most drastic or the worst part of this report against Matt Barnes is the fact that he allegedly put his hands on not just one woman but two. We hope that side of the story is not true. We would like for this entire story itself to be not true, but unfortunately, it seems like a bunch of elements of it clearly are. There was an altercation. Nobody's trying to deny that on either side. Whether or not what we're trying to wait to find out is who's responsible for the altercation and how
Matt Barnes, they have to cut him.
Yeah, and that's something that we're going to talk about here is really the what's next for the Sacramento Kings and where you go from here, how you try and recover. But it's just such an ugly situation, something that you so desperately wanted to avoid. And I worry now that this is going to carry over into multiple aspects of these next couple of weeks, because just focusing on the road trip itself, the Sacramento Kings have been struggling as of late and have been trying to get themselves back into winning form, and things like this certainly going to help as we are awaiting the Sacramento Kings playing the Dallas Mavericks in Dallas on Wednesday, a very winnable game, but now with all this coming into play. Yeah, so with all this coming into play, whether or not Matt Barnes and DeMarcus Cousins will be playing, that's still up in the air. I would assume at least Cousins will be playing, but just a lot of just nonsense that you really did not want to deal with if you're Vlade Divac, if you're DeMarcus Cousins, if you're a Matt Barnes, if you're a Sacramento Kings fan. It's the same nonsense and the same garbage, not necessarily this drastic of a situation, but now you're looking at a roster, and Carmichael Dave laid this out quite well on our morning show. You're looking at a Kings franchise that over the past year, we're talking from December 5th, 2015 to December 5th, 2016, had a player in Rajon Rondo who openly basically outed a gay official. You have Darren Collison, who was found guilty for a mild case of domestic violence. You have Matt Barnes getting into this altercation at the nightclub with DeMarcus Cousins being involved. Just more and more and more ugliness and horrible circumstance surrounding this franchise. And this might be the rock bottom that the Sacramento Kings needed to start the climb up, Leo.
Yeah, and that climb up, that might mean blowing up the entire team. I hate to say it, and the potential to make the playoffs, but with everything happening and how I wouldn't be opposed to blowing up the team. I really wouldn't, and I'm not afraid to say I was wrong, because even then, when you have a guy like DeMarcus Cousins, you're going to be in every single night. You're going to be competitive, but what the Kings have been lacking the past couple of games, or pretty much every road game, I feel like they lose a game at the end because, first of all, DeMarcus Cousins, he does all he can on offense, and then I think his teammates don't help him enough on offense. But then he also has lapses on defense where you allow guys like Al Horford to get the biggest three-point shot of the night, and you allow a bench player from the Knicks to get offensive rebounds when he shouldn't be getting offensive rebounds. So the little things that actual true superstar closers do, he hasn't been doing. And again, I'm not going to put the blame all on him because it's not fair, but you expect your superstar to really be that special player like Russell Westbrook and James Harden has been. And we've had arguments off air about the Thunder and the Rockets and the Kings and how similar these teams are, but at the same time how they are not, because of the type of player that they are being led by, which we can all pretty much say that all these teams, they have one really great player, but and then a bunch of good to above average basketball players alongside them. But it just seems like the difference is that Russell Westbrook and James Harden are actual closers, and they really do make their teammates better, even though their supporting casts aren't as strong as they should be and as they have in years past, Matt.
And I do agree with you when you say that you think it might be time just to blow it up. This might very well be the straw that breaks the camel's back, and ultimately it's going to be a bad look either way, no matter what the Sacramento Kings do here. If this all comes out as true and the Kings continue to try and ride with guys like Barnes and guys like Cousins, if they continue to push that agenda and go that route, then there's going to be a negative result, and any kind of negative attention on the Sacramento Kings is going to be warranted. There's also going to be negative attention if the Sacramento Kings decide, it's not going to work. It just, we need to blow it up, trade Cousins away, trade Barnes away, and just have an ultimate fire sale for the franchise. Either way, the franchise is not going to look good, and I don't think they should be concerned with that anymore at this point. It should just be, we need to do what we need to do to get ourselves back on track, and this purgatory, this state that we're in as a franchise, we need to get out of. And if that means us getting worse before it gets better, then that's what we need to do, because clearly it's not working. I'm sorry, say that again.
It can't get any worse, can it?
No, it can't. With the exception of a record, and that's what everybody's so afraid of, is the record. But in all seriousness, Leo, and this is things that you and I have talked about. We've talked about this with multiple members of the media, with even some players. It's better for the Sacramento Kings to be a worse team at this point, because then they at least have the opportunity to potentially get a high draft pick to where they can start over again, or add a piece that they need. You can't do that with DeMarcus Cousins. And unfortunately, it's not Cousins' fault that he plays in Sacramento, which is not a market that attracts big-name free agents. So Cousins has not been able to get the help that he needs through free agency to become a winning team, but because he can't attract any better quality of a player than a Matt Barnes or than an Aaron Aflalo. And now these guys are good players, but they're not superstars, and they're not that extra piece that DeMarcus needs to have success. He's surrounded by a lot of good pieces here in Sacramento. He's been surrounded by a lot of good pieces throughout his career. However, he has not been surrounded by fellow superstars or fellow leaders, with the exception of guys like Matt Barnes. So unfortunately, these are moves that have to be made. And in order for the Kings to get out of the situation that they're in, and this has nothing to do with anything that has taken place off the court, that has everything to do with just on the court stuff and getting better, the Sacramento Kings' only way, in my opinion, for them to get on the road to recovery, even if it means sacrificing the next season or 2 seasons with having a worse record, is you got to move DeMarcus. That just seems like the only viable option to me.
It's interesting that you say that he hasn't had the help. He claims that he hasn't via free agency, but I tell you what, if the Thunder and the Rockets make the playoffs this year, there is literally no excuse for DeMarcus not to make the playoffs, because if you look at those teams, I mean, with the exception of this mega superstar in Russell Westbrook averaging a triple-double, and he has a 6 triple-double today, and James Harden leading the league in assists and top 5 in scoring, there is no reason why DeMarcus shouldn't lead this team to the playoffs. I mean, if these guys are doing it, and we can agree that these guys are top 10 players, and DeMarcus Cousins should be leading this exact team to the playoffs as well. I just don't want to hear these excuses that he doesn't have talent. No, if you're that great of a player, you need to be able to make your teammates better. And that's something that DeMarcus hasn't done his entire career, Matt. And I hate to say it, but he hasn't made anyone better. He's a guy that's phenomenal on DraftKings and FanDuel.
Right.
But when you really look at it, honestly, the Thunder and the Rockets don't have Rudy Gay. And I think Rudy Gay is a better second option than anyone on those teams. So for this team not to make the playoffs, which is why I'm so critical of DeMarcus, to me it's unacceptable. And if you can't make the playoffs with Rudy Gay as your second option, which again, I've said this in the past, DeMarcus and Rudy can't be your first or second. They have to be your second and third option. But still, to not make a top 8, and for Russell Westbrook and James Harden, literally with above average talent, to make it, that to me that brings up question marks about DeMarcus Cousins' ability to lead a team.
We have a comment here on our comment stream by Obi-Wan Gaming. Thank you for weighing in, Obi-Wan. And he said, I think we should just trade everybody besides DeMarcus Cousins. That's a common comment that I've seen both through our text line at KHTK and then through outlets like this and also on social media platforms. It's one of those comments that's really unfortunate and frustrating to hear, because you got to understand, people, DeMarcus Cousins is the only trade piece that carries any kind of value to other teams. That's just the fact of the matter. Rudy Gay is a good player. Guys like Aaron Aflalo and these guys, Darren Collison, Ben McLemore, they're decent players, but they don't carry that much value in the trade market. DeMarcus Cousins is the only one who does. So you can't change this team through trade if you're not willing to give up DeMarcus Cousins, when DeMarcus Cousins is really your only number one trade asset, because the Sacramento Kings don't even have draft picks to move anymore. It's literally DeMarcus Cousins and DeMarcus Cousins alone. Rudy Gay would be more valuable if he wasn't on a player option contract year, which most likely, no matter where he goes, he is not going to exercise that option because he wants to get paid. That's just the fact of the matter. So then all of a sudden, Rudy Gay has less value than he would if he was under long-term contract. And then you look at the rest of the Kings players. They're solid, decent role players who have come to Sacramento, and for most of them, they've gotten worse. And that's the number one question that I have with DeMarcus Cousins, Leo, is why is it that these guys, why is it that Aaron Aflalo, that Marco Bellinelli, that these players can do so well and can perform on other rosters, and then they're not superstars on other rosters, but they're good, solid, consistent players, and then they come to Sacramento and they struggle? Why is that? Well, the only consistent I can point to is DeMarcus Cousins. Is that 100% fair? No, because DeMarcus Cousins is not in charge of how many shots Aaron Aflalo decides to make from outside. DeMarcus Cousins is not a direct effect on their shooting percentage. But after a while, you have to look at the one consistent that's been with this franchise. There's been two consistents, really. The first consistent has been all the role players that the Sacramento Kings have brought in, especially at the shooting guard position, have turned out to be flops and busts. That's consistent number one. Consistent number two has been DeMarcus Cousins has been the centerpiece of this roster. So somehow those two correlate, because for some reason players come to Sacramento and it's, as Rudy Gay calls, basketball hell, and they get worse. Yet DeMarcus Cousins continues to put up phenomenal numbers. So because we see those numbers, suddenly we're a little more willing to accept the fact that other talent has gotten worse, because Cousins somewhat picks up the slack and scores 37 points or 36 points or 34 points. DeMarcus Cousins is a stat sheet stuffer, but that is it. He has not won a game, and he has clearly not, or he has not had a winning season, I should say, and he has clearly not helped this franchise get better, because every time they bring in pieces around him for him to get better, he gets worse. The number one argument that people have in support of DeMarcus Cousins is he does not have any help. Well, how many times do the Sacramento Kings need to go out and get potential help for him that isn't another superstar, and it fail?
The Rockets and Thunder don't have superstars, Matt, but yet
they win.
Are winning.
Yep. And it's leadership. And it all comes down to leadership. And DeMarcus Cousins is not a leader. And it sucks. And it's hard to say, but it's true.
Yeah,
He's not a leader.
Say that he is not a great player. He is a great individual talent with a huge, and I mean a huge, generous heart. Like, he is a great person, and we're not attacking his person, his individual off the court, because I think he's, if not the most generous player in the NBA. And
he's one of them.
Yeah, and for sure. But we are talking strictly on the court. DeMarcus Cousins is not a leader, period.
And it's come out more and more, and the longer that this goes on, the more frustrating it gets, but the more apparent it gets. And I understand the argument that Cousins hasn't had any help, because it certainly looks like he doesn't. When Rudy Gay's not on, it might as well be DeMarcus Cousins versus five guys. There is scoring there. Guys like Darren Collison, guys like Aaron Aflalo, guys like Omri Caspi at times are pouring in 10, 11, 12 points, but it never really feels when you watch the game like he has any kind of go-to support. There is no Klay Thompson to DeMarcus' Steph Curry out there. And it's unfortunate. And it's frustrating because you want to see him have that partner in crime. But the closest thing Cousins has had to a partner in crime in Rudy Gay, Rudy is sometimes inconsistent, and DeMarcus Cousins is not able to carry the team over the hump when Rudy Gay has those bad nights. And also, there have been multiple times where Rudy Gay and DeMarcus Cousins have clashed because Rudy Gay would make decisions or moves that DeMarcus Cousins didn't necessarily like. That's not leadership. And it's so freaking frustrating because all of us see those stats that he put up and all of us see his ability down low. And we want so bad for it to work because we do know that he's the best big man in the NBA. But he cannot win here in Sacramento. And I think the best thing for both him and this franchise is to go separate ways because DeMarcus Cousins, the quality of player that he is and the numbers he puts up, he deserves to be on a winning franchise. That's just the fact of the matter because he can really help a team in the playoffs. And the Sacramento Kings deserve to get out of this crap. And as much as Cousins wants to put together a super team involving John Wall and Eric Bledsoe and his former Kentucky team, as much as he wants to do that, it's not going to happen because the Sacramento Kings don't have the pieces to make that happen besides DeMarcus Cousins. And they're not good enough in free agency or not in a big enough market or in a more attractive location for players to come in free agency. So the likelihood of one of those guys, a Bledsoe or a Wall, signing in free agency is extremely low because the Sacramento Kings would have to pay uber amounts of money in order to make that happen. And that's after the alleged contract extension that DeMarcus Cousins is going to demand if the Kings decide they want to try and stick with him. It's a lose-lose situation everywhere you look besides trading him.
Yeah, and even if you do get these guys together, all three of these players, you're still going to need shooters to surround them because John Wall is not a very good shooter, and he hasn't been his entire career. Eric Bledsoe is not a very good shooter either. These guys are scorers. They can take it to the cup and really control a game in transition, but you're still going to need these role players, just like when the Big Three in Miami got together. They still needed very good role players like the Ray Allens of the world and all these, Mike Millers and James, I forget his name, but point is, you still need players, and for the Kings to pull off these three guys, they're not going to have any money to bring in anyone good. And why would anyone want to come play with guys who are, let's just call it the way it is, non-winners?
And that's what this franchise has been. It's been a non-winning franchise, and it seems the only way for things to change.
And Cousins are non-winners.
Here's a nice little question to throw out there that for everybody to mull around. If DeMarcus Cousins was not drafted by the Sacramento Kings, do you think that he would ever consider coming and playing here?
Never.
No. A player the quality of DeMarcus Cousins would not consider coming to play here in Sacramento unless there was a team similar to the 2002-2001 Kings where something special was going on to where players want to be a part of that. That is literally, besides forcing players to come here through trades and through the draft, that is the only way to get players to come here, which is where the Kings need to focus their efforts. Yes, the drafts have been just a nightmare for the Kings in the past. Yes, it's natural for us as fans to not trust the draft process based off of how our franchise has approached the draft. I mean, please, Vlade, getting Papagiannis, and then going back to the moves that some of the Maloofs were making, getting Jimmer Fredette, getting Thomas Robinson, naturally there's animosity and frustration there because we've seen all the failure that has come in the draft for the Sacramento Kings. But that's the only option they have, Leo. In my opinion, that is the only option they have. The Sacramento Kings need to look at all offers, need to be open-minded to all offers, need to stop nobody on this team can be considered untouchable anymore, because the only way you can have an untouchable player on your roster is if you're a winning team. You can't have an untouchable player on a roster that at best wins 32 games. DeMarcus Cousins may potentially be the piece that the Kings need to lose in order to start this road to recovery. And it might be the blow up that both sides need. And again, it's not an anti-Cousins take, because it's not 100% his fault that he's in this situation in Sacramento where he can't get the help that he needs, because with him on the court, the Kings are too good to get a high draft pick, but not good enough to attract a superstar. And that's just how it is. And the only way to get out of that, even if you get worse, is to get rid of DeMarcus Cousins. That's, if someone can present to me an option, another plan B, or at this point, plan Z, if you can present anything like that that makes sense, that hasn't already been attempted by the Kings, please be my guest. And you can't just come out and say, well, go out in free agency or go make a trade, send Rudy Gay off and bring in a player that DeMarcus Cousins knows and loves that'll help Cousins right away. Okay, go ahead. Do it. And NBA Trade Machine or NBA 2K doesn't count. Go out and actually do it, because there is no option for the Sacramento Kings, in my opinion.
Exactly, and it's not that easy. You always have to put yourself in the other team's shoes and say, will this trade make me better? And again, the Kings don't have any pieces. They don't have draft picks to really incentivize any other team to give up their star player. So I flip the question to all Kings fans that say, oh, let's bring on John Wall and let's trade Rudy Gay and Darren Collison for John Wall. And I'm like, why would the Wizards do that?
Yeah, not a good move.
Like, would you trade Bradley Beal and some other jabroni for DeMarcus? Of course not. So why would you assume that the Wizards would take, let's be honest, average or above average players for a top tier 2 point guard? Because he's not top tier 1. There's no way that he's an elite point guard. He is a very good. He's pretty close to that, but he's not there yet. He's not Dame, he's Steph Curry, Russell Westbrook, Chris Paul. He's not in that class, but he's a Division 2 tier point guard.
Yep. You almost are at a loss for words, because it feels like it's the same conversation, because it is. It's the same situation that the Sacramento Kings have been in for year upon year upon year upon year. And what people hung their hats on was things will get better when the new arena opens. Things will get better when we make this transition out of the old era into the new era.
It's just, it's a process.
Yeah, it's a process that, unfortunately, I don't even think has begun yet, Leo. Yeah. And I don't think it will begin until the necessary moves are made.
Well, it just depends if like we've been stating, if they do trade DeMarcus, it'll be interesting to see what they get in return. And we can't assume that it's going to be a bunch of jabronis, because I'm sure Vladdy's not stupid, and I'm sure he's going to get some really good talent in return. And that's what the Denver Nuggets did when they got rid of Carmelo Anthony. They got better. That team was very deep with,
look at the Warriors and Monte Ellis.
Exactly my point. So we don't, probably it's more of a certain that they might be worse if they get rid of Cousins. But at the same time, it's not out of the question that they might get deeper, because teams are going to have to really, give up something of importance to get a guy like DeMarcus Cousins, because DMC is that talent that might really push you into that top tier NBA level where you might be competing for a championship now, or you might be competing for a playoff spot. So it's not a guarantee that they get worse, but, they can also get better, because that Nuggets team, when they traded Carmelo Anthony, they got a lot better.
Leo, we're going to take
but they got better.
So we're going to take a break from this conversation really quick. Just to kind of cool things down a little bit, and then we'll return, because there's a few more closing thoughts and things that we want to touch on involving all the news involving the coverage of the Matt Barnes and DeMarcus Cousins situation in the New York City nightclub with the alleged fight that was reported earlier, or very, very early this morning. And then it took place in the wee hours of the morning in New York City. But before we do that, we want to let you know that if you're a Kings or Reno Bighorns fan and you're looking to watch your Kings rookies play with the Reno Bighorns this season, grab life by the horns, visit Don Wire's Reno Dodge dealership and earn big-time savings on your next 2016 Dodge Ram. Ask for the CK special to get 20% off MSRP, and with the purchase of a new or used vehicle, this is awesome, you receive a 5-day, 4-night cruise certificate for two to either Mexico, Bahamas, or the Western Caribbean. It doesn't get any better than that, ladies and gentlemen. Watching basketball, driving a Dodge Ram, and going on a terrific cruise, that is all about what grabbing life by the horns is. And it's awesome. Also, just a little update for you. Cruise certificate recipient is responsible for port charges, taxes, customs, and fulfillment fees. See cruise certificate for full details. So a great deal offered by Reno Dodge and right by the Reno Bighorns. And Leo, you were in Reno not too long ago, a couple days ago, actually, covering the Reno Bighorns and watching some of their games down there. And as is custom, why don't you give us a little update just on how Reno looks and how the Kings rookies down there are faring?
Papagiannis played well. I think he had 4 to 5 blocks that game. In person, he looks a lot lighter. It seems like he lost weight, which is good to see that the kid is progressing and that he wants to get better. So that's always good. Malachi, I believe, was sick. He got about 10 to 12 minutes that night, so he didn't play much. And it was pretty damn cold. I'm not gonna lie. It was I think it was 30 degrees or something cold like that, man. And the wind was pretty awful. And I saw that he had a big cough, so he didn't play much. Scal had 20 points, so he balled out. That was his first good game. Scal was showing. It's funny because I posted those highlights, and in one of the highlights he did travel. I was just trying to be humorous and just posting that out there. Like, I knew he traveled, but you sometimes get away with those things when you're a better player in the D League. And Paige Stojakovic, Ken Cantanella were in attendance. I believe some of Papagiannis's people, family members, were in attendance. So, that was good to see. But at the same time, they're not winning either, which is funny. And it sucks because the fans there expect a show, and the Bighorns didn't show up that night. And for the most part, they're pretty entertaining to watch. It's a nice little environment. It's a 4,000 to 5,000 capacity event center, but it was kind of empty that night. But still, the people who showed up, they weren't very impressed with it, and I wasn't either. It was really a bad game to watch. And then without Malachi really playing much, there wasn't really much of an incentive to watch, and I'm being honest. But, it was good to see Ken. I spoke to Ken after the game for a little bit, and, Peja and Ken were evaluating the team, and that's what I was told, and that's what I'll end it with.
Yep, so plenty to keep an eye on down there in Reno with the development of these 3 Sacramento Kings rookies, and then other players like a Lamar Patterson or an Isaiah Cousins. Just a bunch of guys to keep your eye on down there, and a bunch of solid pieces that hopefully can find a way to contribute for the Sacramento Kings or some NBA team in the future. Malachi Richardson seems to be the one that's the closest to doing that. It's unfortunate that he was not able to play as much as we would have liked him to see. Malachi Richardson is someone who I think can benefit from the moves that I believe are on the horizon for these Sacramento Kings, because he might have the ability with a blown season to be able to come here and get some quality NBA time to speed his development along. I hope that he does get that opportunity, because those minutes where they may seem meaningless to some fans or to other players who have been in the league for a long time, they can be a major difference in the development of young talent like Malachi. And hopefully the Syracuse native can find his way onto our roster sooner rather than later, because based off of what we've seen in his practices and his shoot-arounds and his in limited minutes with the Kings, and then with his performances in Reno, He looks like he is a player that can ball and can certainly be a potential piece for the future that the Sacramento Kings can use. Leo, that's going to wrap it up here for our little Reno Bighorns update. Thank you so much for going down there and providing the coverage as always. And you can follow all the coverage and all the updates from Leo's trips down to Reno on cowbellkingdom.com or on any kind of social media platform. He always has it there for you, and it's good to get an idea of everything just going down there in our neighbor state. But we have about 15 minutes left here of time in our podcast, so we are going to return to really the main story of today, and probably it's going to be the main story for the Sacramento Kings for the rest of this week, and that's involving the Kings incident in the New York City nightclub. Before we do that, though, we want to let you know that if you're a basketball fan or simply love the Sacramento Kings, hoopcats.com is the place to go when it comes to NBA autographs, memorabilia, and trading cards. If you want to sign DeMarcus Cousins or Willie Cauley-Stein rookie card, hoopcats.com has got them. Make sure to like their Instagram page and ask for the CK special to get some awesome discounts on all of the cool stuff there. Again, that's hoopcats.com. So it happened, and it's unfortunate that it happened, but it did happen. Now, hopefully, sooner rather than later, we can get to the bottom of what really took place, and proper justice and the proper result can come out, and that means both sides. That doesn't mean that if the Kings party or Matt Barnes or DeMarcus Cousins are somehow at fault, that they get off scot-free so that they can potentially help this team win a couple more games. You can't wish for that. You have to wish that the proper justice and the proper result comes, and even if that means the expense of players like DeMarcus and of Matt Barnes. We received a lot of frustrating tweets and emails and texts this morning when we were covering the Matt Barnes situation from a lot of fans who were not afraid to show their love and support of DeMarcus Cousins and their loyalty to anyone who really puts on a Sacramento Kings uniform, which is very admirable to an extent. But a lot of them were coming after us, talking about the story as we were and presenting both sides and really focusing so heavy on a story when neither Matt Barnes or DeMarcus Cousins had been formally accused or any charges had been pressed or anything like that had taken place. It was just speculation based off of the videos and off the reports that we were reading. I want to reiterate the fact that our job as media, both in Sacramento Sports Radio and then us here at Cowbell Kingdom, is to share what is going on and share what we know and formulate opinions off of that and try and be as unbiased as possible. That is what we do. That is our job. Now, a friend of our show, former Raiderette and a practicing law or sports law attorney, her name's Emily Campagno. She is a phenomenal woman, extremely smart, has that Raider connection, which is always a good thing. And she's an awesome person. She tweeted out that if the allegations are true involving Matt Barnes, not only harming one, but two women, if they are true, the most severe penalties that he could potentially face are up to 7 years of prison time. Now, when she shared this information and then when we retweeted and kept this information circulating and going out, we were met with a lot of frustration and anger from fans who are like, how can you talk about this when there has been no formal accusation or no charges have been pressed? We don't even know if this is true, so how can you talk about prison time for Matt Barnes? When you study journalism and when you share a story and put it out there, you always share the who, what, when, where, and why of what's going on, and then you share the what's next element, because nobody likes to hear the beginning and middle of a story and not know or have an idea of maybe how it's going to end or how this is going to affect players or the Kings or just the future of the organization. So when Emily puts out this information and we retweet this information of what potential repercussions Matt Barnes can face if he is indeed proven guilty in the severest degree of everything going on, that's valid information to be put out there because it gets an idea of an element of what's next. We hope that it never comes to that. Prison and jail are horrible, horrible things to even think about. And if DeMarcus Cousins and Matt Barnes are proven completely innocent in all this, I will do a dance for joy. There's no hiding that people like myself, like Leo, and many other members of the media are very critical of DeMarcus Cousins and Matt Barnes and who they are and how they affect the team. But never, ever, ever would any of us try and push our own personal agendas or our own opinions of them as basketball players. We would never use things like this and these horrible potential criminal acts. We would never use these for our own benefit. And I hope people understand that, because we want all parties to be safe and scot-free here. We want everything to go back to normal. We want to just see Matt Barnes and DeMarcus Cousins do what they do on the floor and make decisions on their future based off of that, not based off of any kind of altercation in a nightclub in New York City that has nothing to do with the game of basketball itself. So all around, a very frustrating situation, but you have to understand that we as media, it is our responsibility to report every aspect, even the stuff that goes against players that we may support or a team that we love, which in this case, it's a horrible look for the Sacramento Kings. And the Sacramento Kings are a franchise that Leo and I both adore, but it's what we have to do. And we appreciate those who recognize that. And for those who may be frustrated or angry with how this is being approached and covered, I encourage you to just keep an open mind and recognize that none of this has anything to do with any kind of personal agenda, or none of us are rooting for anything less than a clean and return to normal situation. And I don't know if you have any reaction to that, Leo.
Yeah, we want Kings W's just as much as you guys do. And this is just simply not a good look, regardless of the situation. Again, we don't know all the facts. We don't know if Matt's gonna face these charges, right? But what we do know is that he was there, that he put himself in that situation, that he's 36 years old, that he was Snapchatting alcohol in the locker room after the Philadelphia game. Those are all facts. Like, we know these things, and if you want to go ahead and justify these things, be you and do you. But I have morals and values, and that's just not a good look. You know, Matt, you agree with me. It's not a good look. It doesn't matter. I don't condemn them for going out and partying, because that's what people at that level do. And well, most of them do, because, you know, they have money and they want to have fun, and they're in New York City. I get it. And it's okay, but to publicize these type of things, and for me to see, oh God, they're Snapchatting or they're IG storying these things, you're like, please just stop. Because yeah, these things erase after 24 hours, but it's so easy for someone just to screenshot this and screen record this, and then they send it to TMZ or to Bleacher Report, and then it goes viral. And now it's a PR nightmare for the Kings, and it's something that we always have to deal with. And my question is, when is this going to stop?
Guys, we're exhausted. And it's not just us, as in myself and Leo, and then members of the media. As a city, we are exhausted, because we continue to be put on this roller coaster by this franchise. And a lot of these things are things that the franchise can't 100% control, but they can also do more to stop them or to address them than they have in years past. It's exhausting. We're tired of it. We are drained by it, and it just feels like another of a series of sucker punches. And if we are in a UFC ring fighting the Sacramento Kings and all these breaking news rumors, we are getting the light or the crap kicked out of us by Conor McGregor, essentially. We are not.
Hold on. And then Joakim Noah says that DMC is an emotional roller coaster. And
is he wrong?
No, he's not. And that's something that we can't continue to essentially block. Like, we have to call it the way it is, because it's our duty to be objective about this. And as much as we love DeMarcus and his skill set and all this stuff, he's right. And that really hurts the team. And that's why we say he is not a leader, because you have this type of guy that's an emotional roller coaster, for Pete's sake.
And unfortunately, it appears that it's going to have to get worse before it gets better. However, the only way that it's going to get worse is in record. And in the long run, is the difference between being the 10th seed in the I almost said AFC. I've been too much in football. Is the 10th seed in the Western Conference, is that worse, that much worse or better than being the 12th or the 13th or the 14th? It really doesn't matter, because ultimately you're not in the playoffs. And if anything, it is worse because you're not getting as high of a draft pick. Everybody lives in constant fear of seeing the production of DeMarcus Cousins in anything but a Sacramento Kings jersey, and I totally understand that. I know that if the Kings do make a move involving trading DeMarcus Cousins, and let me reiterate, this has nothing to do, the trade DeMarcus Cousins situation has zero to do with the nightclub incident. This is focused on basketball itself. When he returns to Sacramento in another team's jersey, he's going to destroy us in the stat column. That is what he does. And it's inevitable. People are scared of that. I get that. But it's just gonna be what it's gonna be. And maybe the Kings trade DeMarcus Cousins and they are a losing franchise of like 15, 20 wins for the next 2 seasons, and Cousin goes and he's in the playoffs for the next 2 seasons, and we have to sit on our couch in April and in May and watch him play in the playoffs, and that's going to sting. But ultimately, like what happened with the Golden State Warriors in trading Monte Ellis, like what happened with the Denver Nuggets in trading Carmelo Anthony.
When they traded Kevin Love, they got Andrew Wiggins, and then they got Anthony Karl Towns.
And this was the Andrew Love, or this was the Kevin Love, that they traded. That was a double-double machine. Like he
13.
Now, he broke the record for consecutive double-doubles. He was not an easy piece to get rid of. Yes, the Timberwolves aren't doing that well right now, but tell me you would not want the roster that the Timberwolves have and the future that they have involving Tom Thibodeau. My brain is shot, guys. I've been up since 5 a.m. and it's been just one crazy, crazy long day. But ultimately, it seems like that is the only option that the Kings have not tried. Everything else they've tried and it hasn't worked. And sooner or later, you just need to accept that if this is the only option that we have, we can't, as a franchise, and I believe Vlade, I hope Vlade understands this, and I hope Vivek understands this. As a franchise, you can't be scared of your own players, and you can't be scared of other teams, or you will be punished in this league. You have to have complete confidence in your general manager and in the moves you make in the hopes to get better, even if it means initially getting worse. The Kings are scared to get rid of DeMarcus Cousins, therefore they will never win with DeMarcus Cousins, and other teams are going to try and take advantage of him as best as they can. I would rather see the Kings make a move to where they have a full confidence trade set up to where they trade DeMarcus Cousins, and I'd even take a good role player or two and then a high draft pick. If you have full confidence in that move and saying, okay, this is what we need to do to start to fix things, even though if it hurts in the short term, if they have full confidence in that move, then I think it's a step forward. But if they continue to allow themselves to be swayed like fans are by DeMarcus Cousins' numbers and focus on that more than they focus on the tally in the win column, nothing's going to change. And until I'm proven otherwise, there's not much more that can be said about it. Again, if you can present a viable plan Z that the Kings have not tried yet, other than trading DeMarcus Cousins, please do. And I'm sure Vlade will take your phone call, because at this point, almost all other option, I would actually go as far to say all other option has been exploited and exhausted.
Yeah, and as I stated earlier, you know, I'm a firm believer that if this team stays put, they're going to get better as the season progresses, but you have to think long term. Like, the Kings, as you stated, Matt, they're in this NBA purgatory, right? And they're just in the middle. With DeMarcus Cousins, you're not going to be the worst team in the NBA, but you're not going to be a playoff team. So that leaves you in a stale position where, as a fan, you don't want to be in that position, right? Because you're not good enough to make the playoffs, but you're not bad enough to get a top 3 pick. So in this situation, you just really have to consider. And, he's not untouchable anymore. I don't think any player is untouchable, to be honest with you. Like, any player is untouchable. But now I think fans will begin to realize that DeMarcus Cousins is not untouchable. And as much good as he does in this community, like, he's a great, generous, big-hearted person. This is strictly basketball. They have to consider blowing it up and really getting some young talent in return, because if not, they're going to be in this situation because they're not going to attract anyone in free agency because he hasn't proven to win. And because of that, you don't attract players to come to Sacramento, even though we have the best arena in the world. And that's something to note. But if they were winning, then the higher tier players would want to come here. But they haven't proven that. And again, you have to build through the draft and really hope that you strike gold, because if you don't, then we're going to be in a situation. And again, if this team stays put, 8 seed all year long, but that doesn't mean they're going to get that 8 seed. And, again, just based on what Coach Joerger is capable of doing, they're going to get better, and no question about it. But again, are you content with them not making the playoffs, not getting a draft pick, and staying in the same situation? I guess that's something that fans should really sleep on tonight and be like, okay, this is what I want for the Kings. Possibly a playoff, maybe a 25% chance of making it this year with this exact team, or just really blowing it up and getting young draft picks and pretty much pushing that reset button and hoping that you strike gold and potentially can escalate you to a true playoff contender and eventually a championship contender, man.
This is a conversation that we'll have to carry over into another time, because it is a very emotional time right now for Kings fans, for members of the Sacramento media, just with everything that has gone on over the past 24 hours. And it's a conversation I think we should come back to and return to when everybody's calmed down a little bit, so it doesn't just feel like such initial hot take reaction or overreaction based off of the New York City altercation. But in the long run, I think it is stuff that people should think about and really sleep on and really break down. What would it take for you to be okay with and open to a move featuring DeMarcus Cousins? Would you have to know that it's going to get better, or would you be willing to, and this might be a tough thing for a lot of Kings fans, trust that Vlade and the Sacramento Kings organization has exhausted all other options, and this is the only other option they see fit to potentially change things, and you're just going to have to believe in them, even if it means initially things are going to be a lot more difficult. It's a tough road. It's a tough situation that we as fans and we as media are going through here in Sacramento. There is no easy answer, but it's pretty clear. As a transformer just appeared behind me or something.
Drama, lots of drama.
it's pretty clear that things need to change, and they're not going to fix themselves. And I don't think that DeMarcus Cousins is going to be able to fix them. He is not strong enough to carry that load on his back. He needs help, and the city of Sacramento is just not able to provide him with the help that he needs. So it just, in my opinion, it would seem, and we'll revisit this, but it would seem that the best chance that the Kings have and the best future for both DeMarcus Cousins and for the Sacramento Kings would be if they are no longer on the same team. And it's tough. It's hard to think about because we haven't seen Cousins in anything other than a Team USA jersey that wasn't purple. But, at some point you just got to pull the plug. And I'm sure a lot more fans I know now are starting to slowly kind of understand that and come around and recognize that. But there still are so many people that are so locked onto Cousins and see his numbers and see the kind of player that he is and not be willing to leave that and abandon that. And I understand that. So again, it's a conversation that we will have to revisit. And we definitely will in our next podcast. And keep an eye out on cowbellkingdom.com. And ultimately, keep following Cowbell Kingdom. Keep following any of major Sacramento sports media locations, whether it's the Sacramento Bee or KHDK, for any updates on this story. And we hope that in the next coming days that this situation works itself out and then things can return to normal. So again, we can just focus on the basketball issues, because there are plenty of those to deal with. And the last thing the Kings need are off-court issues to boot.
Yeah, I think you stated things very well, Matt. And, I stated my final thoughts the last time that I spoke, and that's what I'm going to end it with, man. I mean, it's time for change. It's time for change, man.
And change needs to happen, and it's not going to happen overnight. Please, will the Kings do something? We'll find out. So just keep an eye on it. That's really all we can say. Leo and I are going to go get a well-deserved night's sleep. We encourage everybody to do so as well. Trust the process and hope that everything works itself out in the long run, and that just the proper justice and the proper result comes for the situation. Again, we will try and update you as best as we can on everything. But until next time, my name is Matt George for my partner, Leo Biaz. This has been a very somber Cowbell Kingdom podcast, but we thank you so much for sticking it through. For any of those people that watched live, thank you so much for joining the conversation. Feel free to continue the conversation with us on social media devices, Facebook, Twitter, on Cowbell Kingdom itself, on this YouTube page, whatever have you. We would love to hear and continue that conversation with you. For those audio listeners that are listening at a later time, do so as well. We love to have your input on the conversation as well. Ultimately, work needs to be done, and we'll see where it starts and if it starts and how long we have to wait for it. But we thank you so much for watching, and we hope you have a good night, and we will see you next week. Have a good one, guys.